Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so that you know when live we go. Hello and welcome to the session on current affairs. The purpose of this session are three. One is to give you the list of important topics that you must cover. Two is to discuss with you some questions that will help you judge the knowledge and concept that you have absorbed. And three is to discuss with you some tricks and smartness that you can deploy in attempting the prelims paper. Let's begin with our first topic, East Asia Summit's Conference on Maritime Security Cooperation. Any conference related to East Asia Summit or any conference related to any regional groupings, any regional cooperation is very important because UPSC every year asks many questions in the prelims exam related to regional groupings, cooperations, development strategy, declarations and summits. For instance, UPSC in 2015 asked this question, India is a member of which of the following? Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, ASEAN, East Asia Summit. India is not a member of APEC, which was in news back then, and ASEAN. But India is a member of East Asia Summit. Answer in this case was option B. It was fairly an easy question. Similarly, see this question of 2016. Consider the following statements. India-Africa Summit held in 2015 was third such summit. Was actually initiated by Jawaharlal Nehru in 1951. See, India-Africa Summit was hot topic back then because all of the African nations boycotted India-Africa Summit because of many attacks that happened on African nationals in India in that year. So it was all over the newspaper in 2016, and apart from that, this is a very important summit because India-Africa Summit was considered as one of the most spectacular diplomatic exercise hosted by India after NAM, Non-Aligned Movement in 1983. And this was very important event in the diplomatic exercise. This was also seen as a diplomatic edge that India had against China. So anyhow, this was to be known. And the first statement is right that the summit held in 2015 was the third of its kind. So if indeed it was the third of its kind, then it could not have been started in 1951 because it does not appeal to logic that if something started in 1951, then in 2015 it will happen only the third time because these summits and meetings deemed to happen regularly. Also, if you use some logic, back in 1951, India was not so strong that India on one side and representation of Africa on the other side will have a meeting like this because India herself was a poor nation back then. So, with whatever logic, statement 2 seems incorrect. Answer is option A. Now let us solve a question based on a recent conference. Consider the following statement. India, in partnership with Australia and Indonesia, organized 4th East Asia Summit's Conference on Maritime Security Cooperation. The second statement is, India agreed to continue the negotiations on RCEP and set a target of joining it by 2022. I'll tell you the answer and discuss this, but best would be if you think of the answer before I give you the answer. The answer is option A. The first statement is correct that India has organized it for the 4th time. And this time it was done in cooperation with Australia and Indonesia, and the meeting happened in Chennai. But the second statement is purely imaginary. There is no such target given by India, and India has already pulled out of RCEP. So for now, it is a closed chapter. There is no negotiation, there is no pledge. India is not engaging anymore in the negotiations of RCEP. India has organized the 4th East Asia Summit Conference on Maritime Security Cooperation in Chennai in February this year. This was the 4th conference and all 4 of them have been organized by India. The first one was in 2015, then in 2016, the third in 2018 and the 4th in 2020. This time it was done in cooperation with Australia and Indonesia. On the sideline of this, I must also tell you that there are strong voices coming from various quarters for a trilateral partnership among India, Australia and Indonesia. because these three nations are well placed in the Indo-Pacific region and their cooperation would be critical in bringing peace and prosperity in the region. East Asia Summit is a regional forum and generally the meeting of East Asia Summit happens after the ASEAN leaders meeting. East Asia Summit in fact was conceptualized by Malaysian Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad and the first summit was held in Malaysia 2005. It was participated by 16 nations. These 16 nations are the same that you have read in the context of RCEP. 10 nations of ASEAN and 6 nations Japan, South Korea, India, China, Australia, and New Zealand. Then in 2011, the membership was expanded to Russia and United States as well. So now the count is 18. So naturally, India is also a founding member of East Asia Summit. I want to discuss with you a very critical thing. In the fourth summit that happened in February, Prime Minister Modi proposed Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative to be operating under the aegis of East Asia Summit. The aim of Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative would be in alignment with long-term vision of India to foster rule-based international order in the region, to promote free, open, inclusive, peaceful, prosperous Indo-Pacific region, where the international laws like UNC laws, United Nations Convention on Laws of the Seas, are assured to all the states equally. This is what India has been talking about for a long time, and recently also the Sagar strategy that was proposed by India is in line with the commitment of having a peaceful and prosperous region with rule-based order. Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative could be India's first institutionalized policy initiative for a strategic arc stretching across Indian and Pacific Oceans. This could be the first initiative of India under the aegis of a regional cooperation group. The idea of Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative is based on three essential tenets: enhancing the maritime security, sustainable use of maritime resources, and disaster prevention and management. These ideas have been proposed by India through various other initiatives. They just have been grouped together and proposed to be implemented under East Asia Summit in an institutionalized manner. See, India's approach to the region has been consistent, and that is reflected also in Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative. Some of the key aspects in the India's approach towards Indo-Pacific regions are Asian centrality. Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative, coming from East Asia Summit Conference, validates Asian centrality that India has talked about when it comes to Indo-Pacific outlook. There are no second thoughts on the fact that thinking of the Indo-Pacific is anchored around the extension of India's age-old Look East policy. The Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative also underlines other core components of India's stand and India's strategy for the region. First and foremost, India's model for development of Indo-Pacific region calls for a multipolar region. India has adopted an approach which is non-confrontational and inclusive. India already has spelled out the principle of its engagement in the Indo-Pacific region, which is security and growth for all in the region, coined as SAGAR. The Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative talks of similar network of engagement with all stakeholders, and this is what India's aspiration in the region is. So all in all, Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative is pushing forward the strategies India had so far for the Indo-Pacific region. I'll also quickly discuss with you the viability of this idea. There are two questions that are being raised on this initiative of India. One is relating to India's own limitation in carrying forward this strategy, and the other relates to the politics of the region. Will the other nations and groupings cooperate to push forward this initiative? One can raise a question that does India has the potential to back up this idea with political will and resources? A debate on the gap between theory and practice of India's action in such spheres is not new. For instance, Project Mosam, is yet to take off and become the counter to the Chinese maritime Silk Route that it originally intended to be. India's area of interest also largely lies between Strait of Hormuz to its west and the Strait of Malacca in the east. Thereby, it has little interest and presence beyond this region, similar to how US strategy in the region is also lopsided towards the Western Pacific. India's thirst is on the Indian Ocean. This is also one of the reasons why there is no effective collaboration of US India's interest despite declaration of so in many joint statements. There is another major concern that does such a security order resonate in the region with other players? The prospect of this is little gloomy because different stakeholders are interpreting the region differently for their own security interest, and their security interest might not converge. Also, India's balancing act also has been problematic, and it has been hedging between US and its allies, China and Russia. Further, India's own engagement in the region has taken a new turn with its pulling out of RCEP. The idea behind India's Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative is the product of continuity of India's policies in the region, but its relevance is subject to political will, resource backing, and a fair share of policy imagination and diplomatic maneuvering. Every year in the prelims paper, there will be 2 to 3 questions related to RBI's operation, mostly of its monetary policy. Sometimes the question could be very simple. For instance, this question of 2013, in the context of Indian economy, open market operation refers to. It refers to purchase and sale of government securities by the RBI. It's pretty simple, straightforward question. Recently, RBI has tried new innovative monetary policy tool, and one of that is targeted long-term repo operation. We'll have a short discussion on this, but before that, let's solve this question. Which of the following is our possible consequence of targeted long-term repo operation? Boost to investment in corporate bonds, decrease in short-term interest rate, increase in remittance, monetary transmission, increase in long-term bond yield. See, monetary transmission is one of the important goal of targeted long-term repo operation. It is not at all related with remittance. Remittance is money coming from the foreign land. In no relatable way, targeted long-term repo operation is linked with remittance. Bond yield is the return that you can expect on the bond you are holding. And higher bond yield is not a good sign for the economy. It suggests distressed selling of the bond. Suppose I'm holding a bond worth 100 rupees and 10% interest rate. And if I sell it to you at rupees 80, then the bond yield that you will have now is higher than what I was having because you have just paid rupees 80 for it. But the return that you will get would be the same return that I would have got. But I paid for it rupees 100. But I'm doing it because I'm not sure if I would get any return out of it. So I'm selling it at rupees 80, hedging my loss. So in that case, the bond yield increases. Targeted long-term repo operation is as such not directly linked with bond yield, but at all if it is linked, then the bond yield will actually decrease. It will stabilize the bond market. So increase in bond yield is an absolutely wrong statement. So answer would be option B. See, targeted long-term repo operation is essentially a repo operation. You understand, in repo operation, bank gets money from the RBI at repo rate. Bank gives government security to RBI and RBI lends money to the banks. Long-term repo operation would imply that banks are going to get money for a longer period of time, ranging from 1 year to 3 years. Normally, under repo operation, banks get money for few days to few weeks. Targeted long-term repo operation would mean that the money that the banks are getting, they cannot deploy it anywhere they wish. Rather, some condition will be imposed that certain percentage of money has to be dispersed as credit in particular areas. So that is targeted long-term repo operation. RBI has used it as a monetary policy tool to increase the credit flow into NBFCs and microfinance institutions. You know that after IL and FS crisis,
NBFCs have been reeling under the problem of credit crunch, and banks are not ready to give credit to NBFCs because their financial conditions are weak. And in absence of robust rating of NBFCs, banks have no clear idea of the financial health of even well performing NBFCs. But if long-term funds are provided by RBI to the banks at repo rate, which is considerably lower than the interest rate which is charged to the banks if funds are given for a longer period of time. So if banks are getting the long-term loan from RBI at lesser interest, then that obviously will enhance their liquidity and also decrease their cost of funds. So, it is expected that the monetary transmission will happen and banks in turn will decrease the interest rate charged by them to the individual borrowers, to the corporates, to the microfinancial institutions, and to NBFCs. So, the interest rate in general is supposed to come down. This will also give boost to the corporate bond market. The corporate bond market in India is not very well developed. Corporate bonds are one way through which the corporates raise short term loan. But the corporate bond rates are very high because there are not too many buyers. If banks are forced to invest in corporate bond market, then the short term interest rate will also decrease. And the credit availability to the corporates, which is terribly needed at this point of time, would be increased. So, this ultimately becomes a mechanism for the RBI to ensure that money reaches to the corporates and NBFCs through the banks. Because banks were not enthusiastic about lending to these institutions. When RBI carried out targeted long-term repo operation 2.0, it fixed some conditions. The condition was that at least 50% of the total fund must be used to give credit to the following institutions in the following manner. 10% must be invested in the securities issued by microfinance institutions. 15% in the securities or other instruments issued by non-banking financial corporations with asset size less than rupees 500 crore, and 25% must be invested in NBFCs with asset size more than rupees 500 crore but less than rupees 5000 crore. However, there was only limited participation by the banks in the targeted long-term repo operation 2.0, and this clearly highlights banks' reluctance to lend to small and mid-sized NBFCs and microfinancial institutions because of the reason we know that this area is facing crisis because of the scams and because of absence of robust rating mechanism for these institutions. In this regard, it is suggested that apart from the effort of RBI, the effort of Government of India must increase. Government of India simultaneously is carrying out a scheme for partial credit guarantee. Partial credit guarantee seems to be a better mechanism to nudge the banks to give credit to NBFCs because in that case Government of India is standing with the banks in case there is default by the NBFCs. A part of the loss because of the default will be shared by Government of India. So partial credit guarantee scheme must be pushed further if the banks are not receiving targeted long-term repo operation very well. UPSC has developed liking for reports and indices since 2015, and ever since there hasn't been a year in which UPSC has not asked about report or an index. For example, UPSC has asked previously about index of 8 core industries, ease of doing business index, air quality index, global hunger report index, global gender gap index, and many more. Let us do a question on ease of living index. Consider the following statements regarding ease of living index 2019. It has been released by Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Citizen perception survey is part of ease of living assessment. Both the statements are correct and answer is option C. Ease of living index was released for the first time in 2018 by Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. The purpose to release this index was to assess the progress made in cities through various initiatives and empower them to use evidence to plan, implement, and monitor their performance. Ease of Living Index was designed under the Amrut Mission and it was used to assess quality of life of citizens in 100 smart cities and 14 other million plus cities. For the first time, as part of Ease of Living Index, Citizen Perception Survey is being conducted on behalf of the ministry, and this survey will carry 30% weightage in the marks of Ease of Living Index. Adding Citizen Perception Survey in the index is a very good idea. It will strengthen democracy. Feedback is artery of our democracy. Many of the international indexes are based basically on perception of citizen. For example, the Indices of Transparency International on corruption. That is also perception based. This gives the realistic picture of opinion and perception of citizens. UPSC do ask questions on basic chemistry and related to water purification. For instance, see this question. What is the role of ultraviolet radiation in water purification system? It activates or kills harmful microorganisms in water. This is a correct statement because that's the purpose of ultraviolet water purification. It does kill the microorganisms. Second statement is it removes all the undesirable odor from the water. Since this statement has all in it, you must get very cautious. Ultraviolet radiations do not actually remove the odor instantly. If the water is already contaminated by microorganisms, they will die. But the odor won't go. So statement 2 would be incorrect. Statement 3 is it quickens the sedimentation of solid particles, removes turbidity and improves the clarity of water. Sedimentation happens due to gravity, and radiation cannot cause sedimentation because there is no collision. Radiations do not have mass, so the solid particle will not get settled at the bottom because of passage of any radiation through the water. So this is absolutely incorrect statement by common sense, you can say. And if you rule out statement 3, there is only one option you are left with. So any confusion with statement 2 will not be a hindrance in reaching to the right option. Answer in this case would be option A. Let's see this question. UPSC gave this assertion reasoning kind of question. Assertion is large cold storage plant use ammonia as the refrigerant, while domestic refrigerators use chlorofluorocarbons. Chlorofluorocarbons are very commonly used in domestic refrigeration. You must have read it umpteen number of times while reading and preparing Montreal Protocol, and you must also have learned this while studying Kigali Agreement. So assertion is true, no doubt in that. The reason is ammonia can be liquefied at ambient temperature and low pressure. It's a common knowledge that ammonia is gas at room temperature and normal atmospheric pressure. Ammonia will get liquefied only at high pressure. At low pressure, the tendency to be in the gaseous state will be even more. So there is no question of liquefaction at low pressure. So the reason is incorrect. Answer would be assertion is true, but the reason is false. Now let's see a question based on water purification and current affair. Which of the following is our disadvantages of RO water purifier? Beside impurities, RO water purifiers also removes essential natural minerals like sodium, iron, potassium, magnesium, etc. This is a correct statement, and demineralization is one of the major disadvantages of RO. RO actually removes everything from the water, and it allows only the pure water to come to the other side of the membrane of the water purification system. Statement 2 is it does not work well in case of hard water. Well, hard water is the presence of calcium and magnesium in the form of carbonates, bicarbonates, and sulfates. These salts are easily removed by the membrane of the RO system, and it works pretty well in case of hard water. In fact, RO system is most suitable for hard water because normal filtration system does not work in case of hard water. So this statement is incorrect. Statement 3 is home RO filters waste nearly 80% of the water during treatment. This is correct statement. It's around 70 to 80%. It varies, but you have to take the number in a loose manner and the statement would be taken as correct statement. So answer would be 1 and 3 are correct. Option C. Actually, National Green Tribunal directed the Environment Ministry to issue a notification banning RO purifiers
where total dissolved solid in water are below 500 milligram per liter, and sensitize public about the ill effects of demineralization of the water by the RO system. It takes away all the minerals, sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, iron, because everything is filtered out. RO water is not healthy. The tribunal also asked the government to make it mandatory to recover more than 60% water where RO is permitted across the country. Presently, the RO system recovers 20 to 30%. But however, notification in this regard has not been given and the regulation is very difficult. How will you go and check door to door whether people are using the RO system or not in areas where the total dissolved solid is below 500 milligram per liter? That would be a difficult task and in practice any legal measure will not work. So government must fall back on social awareness. UPSC always focus on farmers issue. In prelims, they regularly ask questions on MSP, crop insurance, crop damage, etc. For instance, see this question of 2016. UPSC asked, with reference to Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, consider the following statements. Under this scheme, farmers will have to pay a uniform premium of 2% for any crop. And this sounds a little extreme, so you must get alarmed and think about it a little. 2% for any crop they cultivate and in any season of the year. It sounds a little bit far-fetched because so much of uniformity should not be there, and in fact this is a wrong statement because farmers premium has been kept at a maximum of 2% for food grains and oilseeds and up to 5% for horticulture and cotton crops. Statement 2 is this scheme covers post harvest. Statement 2 is this scheme covers post harvest losses arising out of cyclone and unseasonal rains. This is absolutely correct statement and this was one of the important aspect of Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. Answer would be option B. Let's see a question on the issue of crop damage in the current affair. Consider the following statements. Locusts can travel long distances, traveling from one continent to another. This is absolutely correct because locusts in our country have been coming from African continent, from mostly the Horn of Africa. So this is a correct statement. Statement 2 is all forms of locust are found in India. No, there are altogether 10 forms of locust all over the world and only 4 are found in India. So this is incorrect statement. Statement 3 is Locust Warning Organization functions under Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Incorrect statement because Locust Warning Organization actually functions under Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. Answer would be option A. See, locusts are mainly grasshoppers, but they have strong power of flight, unlike ordinary grasshoppers. They don't travel long distances. Locusts travel great distances, up to 150 km per day. They can eat any vegetation that comes on their way. Recently, researchers have found that under dry and stressful conditions, grasshoppers are getting stressed and transformed into locusts. That is one way of finding the food by developing the power of flight. Altogether, there are 10 kind of locusts found all over the world, but only 4 kind of locust, dry locust, desert locust, migratory locust, Bombay locust and tree locust are found in India. An adult locust can eat their own weight every day, and this is a huge threat to food security. Last year, swarms of locusts in western Rajasthan and northern Gujarat have caused huge damage to the rabi crop. Locust Warning Organization actually functions under Directorate of Plant Protection and Quarantine and Storage, Ministry of Agriculture, Farmers Welfare. And Locust Warning Organization is responsible for monitoring, survey, and control of locusts. Recently, you must have read in the newspaper that Locust Warning Organization gave out warning and suggestions to deal with the locust problem. You must also be aware that at the time of locust emergency, the funds can be diverted immediately from the other schemes of the Department of Agriculture, Cooperation and Farmers Welfare. At present, the Horn of Africa
Countries like Ethiopia and Somalia, they are witnessing the worst locust attack in the last 25 years. The problem is that locusts are now visiting areas where they were not to be seen previously, for example, in the cities of Jaipur, and they have come as far as Delhi. Although the harvesting of Rabi crop has already been done, so chances of crop damage and threat to food security is limited. But with the onset of monsoon, the locusts have started to lay eggs, and they will continue breeding in the next month also. And the next generation will cause huge threat to the kharif crop. Efforts are being taken by the local administration, and many insecticides have been made available to the farmers to kill the locust. Locusts are also being collected and they are being used as feed in poultry and in animal farm because 75% of the locust body is protein. In 2015, UPSC asked this question: Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, often in news, is? The answer was it is an agenda for women's empowerment, an outcome of the World Conference convened by the United Nations. It was the fourth World Conference on Women. Let us see this question. Beijing plus 25 is often heard in news in context of China's Silk Route, Indo Pacific Growth Strategy, Women Empowerment, or Port Development. The answer obviously is option C, Women Empowerment. 2020 marks 25th anniversary of the 4th World Conference on Women and adoption of Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. And because of this 25th anniversary, consultation process to review the working of Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action has been initiated throughout the world. In India too, Ministry of Women and Child Development, National Commission for Women and UN Women organized a national consultation on the review for Beijing Plus 25. And this whole consultation process is being referred to as Beijing Plus 25. UPSC asks questions on infrastructure every year in the prelims paper. UPSC also has asked questions many a times on port. For instance, this question of 2017, what is the importance of developing Chabahar port by India? The answer is India will not depend on Pakistan for access to Afghanistan and Central Asia. In the same year, UPSC asked another question: which one of the following was a very important seaport in the Kakatiya kingdom? This was fairly difficult question because it was not to be directly found in the new NCERT. The answer nevertheless is Mutupalli. You also learn here that from the contemporary issue, UPSC asks questions relating to medieval or ancient history. Now let us consider this question. The major ports are under union list while the non-major ports are under concurrent list. There are more major ports in the western coast of India than the eastern coast. Major ports handle around 70% of total cargo traffic. First statement is correct. Major ports are in union list. You have to mind it that non-major ports are not in the state list, but they are in the concurrent list. So this is a correct statement. Altogether, there are 12 major ports. Somewhere you will find 13, but in the latest report of Ministry of Shipping, it is 12. In 2010, Government of India declared Port Blair as a major port, but nothing has been done on it so far. So if you count Port Blair, it will be 13. But since no progress has been made in the port development of the Port Blair, so generally the ministry also considered it as 12. But if you see on the map, there are 6 on the western side and 6 on the eastern side. So nevertheless, whether you count 12 or 13, the number would be 6 and 6. The 13th one is in Andaman. So this is an incorrect statement. Major ports handle around 60% of the total cargo traffic. This is factual and this is a correct statement. Answer would be option C. Union Cabinet in the month of February has given in principle approval for setting up of a major port at Wadhwan in Maharashtra. The port will be developed as generally is developed in landlord model. Landlord model is characterized by mixed public-private orientation. Like a landlord, the port authority acts as a regulatory body and the operations are carried out by private companies. Reforms related to agriculture are very important for the prelims examination. Let us see this question. Market intelligence and early warning system is heard in news in context of stock and bond market, banking system, for monitoring prices of crops, or corporate governance. The answer is option C. It is related with monitoring the prices of some crops. Ministry of Food Processing Industries has launched Market Intelligence and Early Warning System. Basically, it's a portal, and the purpose of the portal is to monitor the prices of top crops tomato, onion, and potato. Support to the top crops was announced in the budget 2 years back under Operation Green. And one of the stated objective of Operation Green was to set up market intelligence network to collect real-time prices for the top crops. And in fulfillment of the promise, market intelligence and early warning system has been set up. Let us do our next question. Operation Vanilla is related with White Revolution, doubling farmers' income, rescue operation, or anti-terrorist operation. Operation Vanilla basically was anti-cyclonic rescue operation. It was launched by Indian Navy to help cyclone hit Madagascar. INS Erawat, that was already on a mission in Seychelles, that was used in the rescue operation. The assistance of India to Madagascar in form of Operation Vanilla reinforces our principle and our concept of development in Indo-Pacific region, that is security and growth for all in the region, that has been coined as Sagar. Interesting fact, Madagascar produces 80% of vanilla in the world, and that's the motivation for naming the operation so. UPSC has been asking questions on research related to crops. In 2018, UPSC asked this question. With reference to the genetically modified mustard, GM mustard, developed in India, consider the following statements. GM mustard has the gene of soil bacterium that give the plant the property of pest resistance to a wide variety of pests. This actually is the feature of GM cotton, not GM mustard. Statement 2 is GM mustard has the gene that allow the plant cross-pollination and hybridization. This is a correct statement. Statement 3 is GM mustard has been developed jointly by IARI, Indian Agricultural Research Institute, and Punjab Agricultural University. Basically, scientists from Punjab Agricultural University have been rubbing their teeth since last many years to develop this variety of mustard. So this attribution to Punjab Agriculture University and IARI is incorrect. Option 3 is wrong. This was appearing in newspaper in context of Delhi University back then, so this is easy to remember in the exam hall. If you remove statement 3, you'll be left with just one option, option B, which is the correct option. Now let's see question related to current affair. Consider the following statements about arsenic resistant rice Muktoshri. Muktoshri would sound like a Bengali name to you if you are a little bit familiar with the language. Statement 1 is it has been developed by the joint effort of National Botanical Research Institute and Indira Gandhi Institute of Genetic Research. This is an incorrect statement. Statement 2 is apart from arsenic, it will also be resistant to all heavy metals found in the soil. This should be a very easy statement to identify whether it's correct or incorrect because it has this word all in it. All heavy metals. Come on. It sounds so utopic. It has to be an incorrect statement. Muktoshri is largely arsenic resistant variety of rice. It is not resistant to each and every kind of heavy metal. So both the statements given here are incorrect. Answer would be option D. Actually, Rice Research Station at Chinsura, which is in West Bengal, and National Botanical Research Institute in Lucknow have jointly developed this variety of arsenic resistant rice called as Muktoshri. The problem with arsenic is it is tasteless, colorless and odorless. So you wouldn't know whether arsenic is there or not while consuming the water. So testing is needed for detection of arsenic in water. According to some standards, like US Environmental Protection Agency's standard, 10 parts per billion is the maximum level of permissible inorganic arsenic in water, potable water. Arsenic causes cancer of the skin, of liver, of bladder. These are the common harm caused by arsenic to human body, but harm can also be caused to nervous system, respiratory system, cardiovascular system, immune system, and also our endocrine system. With this, we have come to the end of the part 1 of current affairs for February. Subsequently, we'll also have a part 2 for the current affairs of the month of February.